Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. Today we're going to be making these adorable crochet pumpkins. Now you can use any yarn that you like for these. I used this super chunky yarn. As you can see, it just really gives our pumpkin a lot of texture and they just are so much fun. Now I made mine in 3 different sizes, but you can really make a ton of different sizes. I'll show you the special formula once we get into this video, but I will also link a PDF pattern for my specific sizes down below the video. So just click show more and you'll find a link for that there. All right, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. Here's what you're gonna need. Supplies for this project are going to be really easy. You're going to need some little scissors. You're going to need a yarn needle, and I like these clover gold ones. You're also going to need some kind of a stem. I'm just using my cinnamon sticks. You'll also need some twine, although this is optional. I think it adds a cute little touch to our pumpkins. You're going to need a coordinating crochet hook, and I actually tried 3 different brands of crochet hook. This is a clover one. This is a boy one, I think is how you say it, and then this one doesn't have a brand on it, but I got it at Joann's. You're also going to need some yarn. Now for mine, I am actually using this Lion brand yarns Wool Ease Thick and Quick. It's a 6 super bulky yarn, and if you look on the back of your yarn band, it will tell you what size knitting needles or crochet hook you want. So whatever yarn you choose, you're going to want to get a coordinating hook. I'm using a size N hook with my size 6 yarn. So I chose these 3 color yarns to work with, but of course you can choose anything you want. Again, these are the Wool Ease by Lion brand. This one is called Starlight. This one is Succulent, and this one is Mustard. And I like the aqua because it just gives it a little bit of a pop and it matches all of my fall quilts. You're also going to need some fiber fill, just pillow stuffing. I actually didn't have any, so I stole this from my Christmas decorations. I use this for snow for my house village. That's it for everything you're gonna need for this project. Let's go ahead and get started. I will put a link for the PDF pattern below. It does include all 3 sizes, the large, medium, and small pumpkins. So to resize these to any size that you want based on your specific yarn, you're just going to want to choose a yarn with an appropriate crochet hook. It will be listed on the back of your yarn. And then to resize your panel to make sure that it fits your yarn, if you're not using this super bulky like I am, you're just going to want to make sure that your panel is 3 times as long as it is tall. That way you're going to have a nice round chubby pumpkin when you're done. Of course, you can actually experiment with this and make it a little bit taller, and then you'll have a taller pumpkin. So just have fun with it and experiment and see what you can make with this fun pumpkin tutorial. Today we're going to be making the small just because it's a little bit faster. And we're going to be working with this white one because I think it will show up better on camera. And I'm just going to pop off my band, and you're going to want to start out with just about an 8 or so inch tail. And we're going to start off by making a slip knot. So to make a slip knot, you're just going to fold your yarn just like this, and then pop that end up through the loop and just pull to tighten. And then we're going to place that on our hook, and I am going to be using the Clover Armour hook. So for the small pumpkin, we're going to be chaining 11. Our slip knot does not count, so we're going to start counting at 1 now. So to chain, you just do a yarn over from back to front and then pull that through the loop. So that's 1, yarn over, pull it through, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now this is going to be the height of our pumpkin, and we're going to be working a panel across this height. And now we're going to do a half double crochet, and we're going to do a half double crochet in these back bumps. So on one side of our chain we have these V looking stitches, and each one of these V's is a stitch. On the back side you'll see these flat pearl bump looking things, and that's what we're going to be going into. So we're going to do a half double crochet into the back of each one of these, and we're just going to go into the first one on the back side here. So I'm going to pick this first one, and to do a half double crochet we're going to yarn over, and this is going to be a little tight. That's why I told you to make these loose, and if you have to grab it with your finger you can. We're going to go through that. We're going to yarn over and pull loop through, and now we have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. So there's 1. Now we're going to do that in each one of these bumps along the back side. So again, yarn over, and we're just going to find that next one, and it's right there. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. And the pull through all 3 is your half double crochet. So yarn over, go into that next bump on the back side. And if you've done this loosely, then it should be fairly easy for you to get through that back loop. If they're too tight, just rip it out and redo your chain a little bit looser. Now when you're done with this first row, I do encourage you to go back and just recount your stitches, and I'll show you how to do that when I get to the end, just to make sure that you got all of your stitches. Yarn over, go through that bump, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. So we're half double crocheting, and once you get that stitch down, that is everything we're going to really be doing on this pumpkin, except for we'll be doing a slip stitch when we join our row together, which is also super easy. All right, now when you get to the end, you have this one last one here, and this is the one people tend to miss. So don't miss this last one, or your piece will start getting smaller and smaller as you go. So we're gonna find that purl bump in the back there and do one last half double crochet. So this is what it should be looking like. And now we're going to go back and count our stitches to see that we did enough. So each one of these V's, like I mentioned, is a stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You should have 10 of them. When we cast on 11, that one extra stitch when we turn it around is actually part of the next row. So that's why there are only going to be 10 on this one. All right, once we're done with a row, and at the end of every row, you're going to just chain 1. So yarn over and pull through. Turn your work around, and you can see this is sort of the back side, and this side is looking more like the front side. Now we're going to do half double crochets all the way down, but we don't have that purl bump to work in anymore. So instead now we're going to be doing it in the back loop of our stitch. Each one of these V's is a stitch right here all the way down, and you can see all of those V's. The back loop of that V is the loop away from you. So this is the front loop right here. This is your back loop. We're going to be half double crocheting into this back loop. So we'll go into this one, and then this one, and then this one, and so on all the way down our row. You're not going to go into the one that your yarn is pulling out of right here. That's your chain. That's kind of your extra stitch just to change rows. So do not go into this one. We're going to go into this one. So yarn over, go through that back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. So there's our first one, and you can see that we're coming out of this loop, so here's our next loop. So you're just always going to be grabbing that next loop all the way down. So yarn over, go through your next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're going to do that all the way down, and when we're done, I just like to quickly count my stitches and make sure I have 10 stitches on my piece. That way I know I didn't miss any. Like that end one, the end one's always the easiest one to drop or to miss. You can also count as you're going. That's helpful. Now see down here at the end, this one would be really easy to miss, but we do have one more right here we need to grab. So yarn over, grab that last one, and do your last half double crochet. Now we're at the end of a row, so we're gonna chain 1 and turn our work around. So we're gonna keep doing that. We're just gonna be half double crocheting in the back loop of our stitches every time we turn our row. So at the end of the row, chain 1, and then just half double crochet back down your row. And we're gonna do that until we have, for the small pumpkin, we're gonna be doing this for 14 rows. And the goal is to make your pumpkin about 3 times as long as it is high. And I will show you how to do that, or how to measure that, because if you're using different yarn, your stitches might be different. Make sure you don't forget this last one. At the end, chain 1 and turn. And again, you can count your stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're good to go. So here's what we're looking like. You can really see those ridges starting to pop out, and they're just going to give our pumpkin some great texture. So that's pretty much it. We're just going to keep half double crocheting all the way down each side. When you get to the end, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work and just repeat. And we're going to do that until we have our length about 3 times the width of our pumpkin panel, and I will show you how to do that once I get mine finished. So go ahead and finish up your panel, and then I will meet you back here. All right, so here is my panel, and I think I'm about done. And the best way to tell, especially if you're using a yarn that's a different weight from mine, is you want your length to be about 3 times the height of your pumpkin, or the width. So in order to do that, we're just going to take this top corner and fold it down just like this, and then we're going to fold it over one more time, and we're pretty much even with that edge right there. So I think we're good. Now there's not an exact measurement to this, so just use your best judgment, but that's the easiest way to tell without having to count your rows too much or do too much math. So once you're satisfied with the width of your pumpkin, now we're going to sew up our sides. Now before we do that, let's talk about how to count your rows. So each time we do a row, we're creating this ribbing right here. So this side of it is 1 row, and this side of it is another row. So each one of these counts as 2 rows. So if we're starting over here, we've got 1 ridge, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I think I might have said 14 rows at the beginning, but 16 is what I meant for this small pumpkin. So 16 rows, and I think we're good to go. All right, now before we go any farther, I'm gonna just take this end on this side and just weave it in. And with this chunky yarn, the easiest way I find is to wrap it over the top of your needle and then just squish it through that eye, and it seems to go through pretty good. And to weave in our ends, I'm going to weave it in on what I'm considering the back side, and I'm just going to take that end and just run it through some of these stitches. It actually doesn't matter. This yarn is nice and chunky, and you're not going to see it at all, but you can run it right down one of those ridges, and it'll just tuck that yarn right inside, and you'll never see it. Then I like to turn it and go the other way. So we came down this way, and I'm just going to kind of weave back up this way. That'll keep it from coming out later. You don't want to pull it too tight. Just kind of stretch it so it's all nice and not too tight in there, and then you can just clip it off, and it doesn't even matter if there's a tail sticking out because this is the inside of our pumpkin. Okay, now we're going to fold our pumpkin in half, and I like to have it so that my hook is facing me. So when I fold it in half, I have the side that had my tail on it away from me, and the side with my hook towards me. I just feel like that's a little bit easier when we're joining these together. And what we're going to do is just sew this together. Now you can sew it together using a whip stitch. I'm actually going to show you a little technique that's going to kind of help that ridge still stand out. But we're basically going to be sewing each of these stitches together all the way down. So we're at our top up here, and I'm just going to take my hook and place it through both legs of that first stitch on this side and both legs of the first stitch on the other side. And you can see that hopefully right there. Now we're just going to slip stitch all the way down. So we're going to take our yarn and yarn over and just pull it through both of those and the loop on our hook. All right, so there's our first join. Next, we're going to come down to this next stitch and our next stitch. Yarn over, pull through all of the loops. And we're going to just continue joining down this edge using a slip stitch. You can also join using a single crochet if you want more of a ridge on that. You can join using a whip stitch just because it's faster and easier. It's totally up to you. I like to do this one because I feel like it looks pretty decent and gets the job done. So I'm just going to finish going all the way down this edge joining my pumpkin. And if you stayed true to your stitch count all the way down your panel, each of these stitches should line up. Now, if you get to the end and there's your one stitch off, nobody's ever going to notice because we're going to gather this end. So don't worry about it. Don't rip everything out and start all over. Just work with what you have and make it work. All right, and here's our last stitch. Okay, now we can do yarn over and just pull through just to finish that off. And we're gonna cut our yarn at this point. Now, I really like to leave myself quite a good tail. So as long as you can muster, I would say about, for this small pumpkin, I would leave almost about 3 feet or so. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. So 1, 2, 3, maybe we'll do 4 just to be safe. I don't like to have to cut and reattach my yarn at this point, so I'm just going to work with a really long tail. We're just going to pull that all the way through and just tighten it to secure, and now we have our nice tube. And as you can see, that still created a nice little ridge there, so our pumpkin looks pretty good. Okay, next we're going to seal up this end, and we're going to just do that by sewing our yarn through some of those stitches. Again, I'm going to place it on my needle just like this, and this is long to work with to start out with, but then you don't have to cut and reattach new yarn, so I feel like it's just easier to have a really long piece. So next we're going to weave our yarn all the way through this top edge, and this doesn't have to be super precise. I'm literally just picking up random stitches along this top edge and pulling my yarn through. And I sort of gather it as I go. We're going to sew all the way through, and then I'm going to overlap where I started by about an inch or so, half an inch at least. And again, I'm just picking up as many stitches as I can along that top edge. As you can see, I'm not being super precise. It really won't matter when we gather this up. You aren't even going to notice. And this is also the bottom of our pumpkin, so no one's going to notice. Now I think I started right here, so I'm going to overlap again a little ways. And then we can start cinching that up and just take your time. And you want to pull on it, but not so hard that you're going to break your thread. This bulky thread is pretty easy to work with, so not a big deal. And you're going to do it nice and tight. Once you have a little circle going there, you're going to go a little bit more. Once we have it nice and tight, we're going to go back in the opposite direction. So we're going to skip over this stitch so it has something to grab onto. We're going to go back through the opposite way and just hold this tight until you get that secured. I'm going to go back around a couple more times. And we're really just sewing this bottom together so it stays put. Okay, now at this point, I like to run my yarn inside our pumpkin up through that middle. And I'm going to turn my pumpkin inside out for this part. And I just like to secure it one more time, so I'll grab a stitch to go through. It doesn't really matter, just not right where your stitch is coming out. And I'm going to make a loop with that and go through that loop to tie a little bit of a knot right there. It's just going to help secure this so that bottom opening doesn't come open. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our fiber fill. And I just have a big nice pile of fiber fill here, and I'm just going to tuck that inside. And I always put in more than I think because this yarn is stretchy, and if you have a nice good blob in there, then your pumpkin will be nice and full. Okay, so here's what my pumpkin's looking like. Pretty good. The bottom's nice and secure. And now we're going to run a closing stitch around the top edge as well, and that's why I want this nice big long piece of yarn. So just so it stays put on one of these sides, I'm going to pick up some stitches here, and we're just going to weave again around this top edge, just picking up stitches. So just keep on picking up those stitches all the way around the edge. I'm not being super careful with what I'm grabbing. It's not going to matter. Again, we're going to cinch this closed. So this is sort of what it's looking like, the stitches that I pick up. Now I started somewhere in here, so I'm just gonna, again, overlap that a little bit. Okay, and now we can just start pulling that closed, and we can kind of mush our fiber fill around and just get it how we like. Now the other thing I do here, because we are going to be sticking our stem in here, you can stick your stem in there and tighten it up around your stem. I like to use my small finger, my pinky finger, because I feel like that leaves enough of a hole. You want that hole to be tight, but obviously you want there to be a little bit of a hole there so you can get through with your stem. You can even use the end of your crochet hook, whatever you need to just make sure there's a small hole there. Once you have the hole where you like it, keep this nice and tight. And then again, we're going to go back the opposite way, skipping over this first stitch here so that it has something to grab onto. We're just going to go right around that top ring, just in the opposite direction. And once we're happy and we feel like that's nice and secured, I will actually go through and make my little loop here like so, and just go through that loop and tie another knot. This is probably overkill, but I just like to be safe. Okay, so now we've got our pumpkin, and by the way, it is cute just like this, but we are going to add those spines to it. And so I have my yarn coming out right here, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a spine right here. And I like to place my spine right in between my two top ridges, so it pulls in on that dent and pushes out these top ridges. I think that looks nice. So we're just going to run our yarn around there and back up the opposite side in between these two ridges, and I'm just going to pull nice and tight until I feel like it looks good. And then I'm going to grab a couple stitches up here just like that and run that yarn through there and just kind of pull to tighten. And then you can even run one of your loops again through that stitch just to give it a little bit more stability. So now we have two spines. Now I'm going to cut this into 3 on one side and 3 on the other side. You can put as many as you like. Now because our spine is coming out right here, I'm going to take my yarn and just run it under to where I want my next spine to go. So I want it to come out up here. So I'm going to just move my yarn over. And now we can run it around to the other side, just like that. And once we figure out where we want it, again, keep it tight and pull that through. And again, I'll do another little loop right there just to secure it. I do a lot of securing on these just because I want them to stay nice and tight, and they're going to get put in storage, and I don't want anything coming loose. And it's already kind of coming out where I want it, but I am going to scoot that yarn over to right one more stitch. Okay, now we're going to drag it around this side just like that. Pick a stitch to weave it under, pull it nice and tight, and then again do a little loop. I feel like we need another one going this way, so let's just scoot our yarn over there. This is why I like to have a nice long tail. It gives me options when I'm making these little ridges. All right, and since this is our last one, I'm for sure gonna do like a little knot up here. So I'm just gonna make that loop and go through the loop and just tie it to secure it. All right, and now our pumpkin is done. It looks pretty good. I am going to just now weave in this end, and this nice chunky yarn is so easy to hide your threads in. So I'm just gonna weave it down one of those ends, cut it off, and voila, you're never even gonna see it. So here's what our pumpkin's looking like. You can rearrange these spines if you like, but I think it looks pretty good. Our next step is to add our stem, and so you're just going to want to find a stem that matches the size of your pumpkin. If it's too big, these are really easy to break in half. I have a little one here that I broke in half for our smaller pumpkin, and you're just going to stick it right in that hole, and you can hot glue these in there. This one's a little bit long, so I might even break a little bit of that off. You can put a little bit of hot glue on the bottom of this and then stick it in so it stays permanently. I actually don't like to do that. I'm going to tell you why in a minute, but first let's finish off our pumpkin. So the next thing and the last step is just take a nice long piece of twine. I would say this is about, this is probably about a foot. It's longer than I need, but I'd rather have more and be able to trim off my ends. And then we're just going to tie a little knot around there with a little bow. And see, I thought it was longer than I needed, but it's almost perfect. And there we have our finished pumpkin. All right, so here are all of our fun finished pumpkins. Now, like I said, the main reason that I don't secure these permanently is twofold. One, storage. When I store these, I take the little stems out and put them in a plastic baggie, and then I can just store the pumpkins by themselves. That way the stems aren't running into the other pumpkins and snagging your yarn. And then the second part is that you can actually stack these little pumpkins one on top of the other. So if you pull out your stems, you can stack them into a cute little stack and make, you know, an adorable little decor for your home if you want them all in one pile. So I like to give myself some options. The stems are easy to take in and out, and it's not like people are playing football with these, so it's not like you have to, you know, have your stems permanently adhered, but you definitely can. If you would like to do that, you can just put a little hot glue on the bottom, put your stem in your pumpkin, and then just let it set, and they'll be there permanently. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is the different sizes. So both of these pumpkins were made using the same stitch width. So I cast on or chained 11 stitches to start. This one I only did about 12 rows on. This one I did 16. So you can see how much fatter this white one is based on how many rows of stitches I did. So you can definitely change the size of these. The other thing that will alter the size of your pumpkin is your yarn thickness. Again, I use the super bulky, but if you're using thinner yarn, your pumpkins are going to turn out a little bit skinnier. So here are my finished pumpkins. I think they turned out really cute. I love the different sizes. And again, you can just really make these in any colors or sizes that you like, and they all look adorable. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. That way I know to keep making them for you. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next time. But essentially, you're going to want to make sure that your pumpkin the length of your panel, your piece, so that it makes sure. I will include a PDF pattern that will be linked below this video. It includes pattern. I will include a PDF. Pop. Okay then. It's all good. Bam. Runaway pumpkin.